So what do you think makes something a tale of our time?
I think, something that has like a moral direction that we can live by and kind of like hold on to for our future.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read or watch in today's case. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and I'm joined by my long-term Taiwan friend, Kim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim. Yes, it's been how many years? Like 11 years?
I actually don't know.
11 years.
It's around 10 or 11 years.
Yeah, a whole decade.
So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming. And so before we get started, is there anything you would like to say to introduce yourself? Because this is your first time on Tales of Our Time.
Oh.
Not your first time on any of these other shows, but the first time that you've graced my show.
I don't know. There's not much to say. I love cats and I love classic films and movies and, something... Also, mindless things to watch on the background.
Yes.
While I'm doing random tasks.
Now, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the last episode of Friends. I feel like this is a classic series that especially like 90s babies grew up with. I
cannot believe that somebody didn't bring it up before this.
Oh, I'm so obsessed with the show.
I had to go look it up again because I was like, I don't believe I don't even remember when it started airing. It was just so ubiquitous. It was always on TV. People were always talking about it. But the first episode aired in 1994, and it went for 10 years until 2004.
That's
not the
crazy.
Longest show, but crazy.
One of the
very long running.
But it was such an iconic show because there was fashion aspect to it. There were moral what would you call it?
Conundrums?
Yeah, that you would deal with your friends or your family.
I find looking back at it, it is so interesting to me as a time capsule because, like you said, it talked about so many different subjects. It is such an interesting time capsule of how opinions have changed watching it now versus where we were in the 90s on all sorts of things, right? You have body confidence. A huge plot point is that one of the characters, Monica Geller, used to be really fat when she was young. You have problematic characters. You have characters that have grown more popular over time because they're actually, they were not a problem. They were great.
And Friends is not a PC show.
No.
But it had aspects that actually would be relatable today. It just became really engaging and really interesting.
I guess we could say in that way, while the characters are definitely so this is a sitcom, right? And most of the characters do feel like sitcom characters. They definitely feel pre-written. But there is always something that is fun is there is something in a lot of these characters that you probably recognize in people around you. Even if it's
in yourself.
Or in yourself. And it's I know that I know somebody who perhaps you no, you're not Monica Geller. But you have some characteristics of a Monica, or people who be oh, that's kind of a Phoebe
Rachel
thing. That's that's a Joey thing.
Yeah.
You're the Joey of the friend group. You can kind of trace because they had these they really kind of tried to distill some key characteristics in each one of them.
Which is why they made them so relatable.
Yeah.
Which is really fun.
It was. Yeah. It was. And it was a fun show.
It was. And the fact that they all had their own growth within the seasons.
Yeah.
I think that's why it grew with us as we're watching it. So I think that made it so much more meaningful.
Yeah. And you know what? That is a good point. And then after this, we'll focus up, I promise.
Yeah.
But there's just it ran for 10 years, guys. We have a lot of thoughts. But to that point, it is interesting. Not to say that other shows don't have their characters grow, but I do think that you can see a lot of difference in the characters at the beginning of the show and the characters at the end of the show in a way that is interesting because the world in Friends doesn't change. There's no outside, like a lot of shows today are based around like a drama or a cataclysm or a big event or a world-changing thing. But this is a daytime TV series, like about people who are just living their normal lives. There's no big global shifts. It's just as they have lived their lives, they've switched careers, relationships, like they've had their own ups and downs, and you get to see how they have changed through the course of living their life, which I think is more notable. It is more different because we don't really see the effects of these outside forces. It's very like internally driven.
Yeah, but I think with that too, you know, the controversial things were in there that people had to really think about, you know? And it was like, that's why it was more wholesome, I think, and family friendly.
And many times they did kind of have those things in there to have people wrestle with them.
Yeah.
So, okay. We're going to get into the season finale then, the one that aired in 2004. So if you don't know about the show, you don't know the show. So I'll give an overview summary, and then Kim's going to help us with a summary of the final episode of Friends. So real quick, generally speaking, the show is sort of very episodic, but in the overall show, it focuses around 6 people, usually with 3 kind of concurrent plot lines, 2 or 3 concurrent plot lines in one show. There are the brother and sister, Ross and Monica Gellar, their friend, Rachel Green, who is a fashion designer, kind of like business-minded woman.
But more of the business end of it, like buying and selling.
She's like someone you'd see in Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
She's not the designer.
She's not the designer.
Phoebe Buffet, who is sort of a free spirit. Chandler Bing, who is Ross's friend, and he's a writer. And their friend, Joey Tribbiani, who is an actor. So these 6 people kind of go in and out. A lot of the show takes place where they're meeting up at a coffee shop to kind of talk over their problems. But for much of the show, they also do live as roommates in different configurations. That kind of changes and shifts who lives with who. But by the time that we get to the very end of the show, Monica and Chandler have gotten married. This relationship is pretty healthy. Everybody is like on board with it, and something that they had been struggling with and have just sort of conquered / are now dealing with is that they wanted to have kids. They had to adopt very young infants because they could not have kids of their own. Then Phoebe and Joey, I actually don't really remember what they're doing in this episode. They sort of float around in terms of like they do not have any romantic attachments with the rest of the characters. While meanwhile, Rachel and Ross have had an on-again, off-again relationship that has been a cause of a lot of strife. And right now they are off, but that's because Rachel is about to accept a big job, which is going to cause her to leave the country. And Ross has been sort of trying to decide whether or not he wants to ask her to stay. And getting opinions from those other friends, from Phoebe, who's married to somebody else who's not in the friend group.
And let's not forget that Rachel and Ross do have a baby together at this point, Emma.
And I did forget.
So their relationship was very complicated.
Yes.
Not just on and off, but they have a child together.
Yes. So, it has been like 10 years of being together for long periods of time and being broken up for long periods of time. So we enter the final episode where we try to tie this all up. Kim, can you give us a summary of the season finale of Friends?
So I'm going to start with Monica and Chandler. They come back to the apartment and they bring their baby, but it turns out they're twins. So everyone's surprised that now they have 2, and Chandler was kind of like, he's not ready to become a parent of 2 because he was just expecting 1, right?
But he's a very regimented person. Like he had to really build himself up to even want one kid.
And then they're putting their keys on the table and Rachel's about to leave. And before this, on the last night, Rachel goes to say bye, like her last farewell. And everyone's just like bawling their eyes out. And Ross is just like getting hyped up and just like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And then she just doesn't say anything to him because it's really hard for her.
She doesn't know how to say goodbye. So she says goodbye to everybody else.
Except Ross. Yeah. And he gets angry. So he goes over there. And then, of course, like they make up for that night. And she still ends up going on the airplane. But Ross then later decides to go and like try this final gesture, asking her to stay.
For her, she's like, I think we could say goodbye now. This is the last time we'll see each other. And for him, he's like, I don't know if I want this to be the last time. Like, I think this is too good. But she's going to go because this is her dream job. So, like, how does he get there? How's he trying to contact her? Like, what's going on with that?
Okay, actually, let's go back a couple episodes because before she got this job, she got fired from her other job. But then Ross swooped in to get her old job back. And then when he heard that she was going to take another job elsewhere and move away, he didn't want that. So he was like extremely controlling. And then he realized, oh, this is what she actually really wants to do. And I think he was about ready to let her go. And he should have, because this was her dream job.
He goes there. We'll have to talk about that in a minute because I think that's what we really want to talk about. But so she leaves, and as soon as she leaves, he like tries to contact her on the phone, on the cell phone. And so he's trying to drive to her.
Yeah, and he goes to the wrong airport, but then Phoebe gets a hold of her, and there was no phalange on on the plane.
She makes up a lie
Yes.
to try to get her off the plane to try to buy Ross time.
Yeah.
Which is now...
Which actually worked because then some other passenger freaked out. You guys, there's no phalange on this flight. They don't even have a phalange.
Yes.
What
so
is a
they
phalange?
evacuate the whole plane, even though the people who run the plane know that this is a lie. They have to quell the panic. So they evacuate everybody off the plane to investigate for a phalange, which is a made-up thing Phoebe makes up to try to get Rachel off the plane to buy Ross time to get to the right airport. What happens next?
So he goes back to his apartment really disappointed. But he listens to his voicemail, and then she leaves a message. She has this like realization that she does want to stay with him. And so she gets off the plane and she meets him back at his apartment. And that's how the show ends. She's right there. Yeah.
And then it sort of wraps up. They get together. It's implied because
it's
we
implied
leave after
because
this.
that is the
It's
last
implied
episode.
They stay together. The two parents accept parenthood with two, and they're like, oh, this is going to be an adventure of twins, and we love that. And Joey and Phoebe kind of look on happily, and they're like, wow, look, everything worked out.
And nobody takes that big apartment, that rent control apartment, which is so silly.
Don't they leave it? Don't they all leave?
Yeah,
it ends with them leaving the iconic, like basically the set pieces. So let's get into, we've already started talking so much. I'm actually just going to skip straight ahead to what made this show so meaningful. Nope, this episode of the show. We don't have time for the whole show. What made this episode of the show so meaningful to you?
I think when I was watching it, it was kind of like, wow, like I would love to have a grand gesture like that, you know? But now watching it as an adult, it's more of like, you should follow your dreams and decenter men. Because she ends up going back to him. And throughout the seasons, he's always been really controlling. Ross has always been really controlling. And it's like whenever she does well in anything, he gets angry. He gets mad and he doesn't like it. He doesn't support her. Like the way that Monica supports Chandler or Chandler supports like Joey.
Like we have these two other relationships that we can compare it to, where one person works or both people work, right? But that doesn't seem to be reflected ever in Rachel and Ross's relationship. Like even though they both work, he's a paleontologist, like professor. He works with dinosaur stuff. And she is, like we said, working in fashion. They are both professionals, but he seems to mostly just be jealous of her success. Or like maybe not her success, but perhaps the time that she spends on her career.
I think he devalued her actions. Like when she was a waitress, it was no problem because I think he saw her as like less than. But then when she had all of the success, he became like super jealous and like just super controlling, not giving her like phone numbers and like making sure that no guy got close to her and stuff. And it was like his insecurity getting in the way. But like I said, like looking back on the show, it's just like she centered him so much through all of that. And all she wanted to do was just get out on her own. And she did. She did do that, but she could have done more. Like she totally should have gotten on a plane, moved, because realistically, she even said like they were they were gonna fly him there or wherever, like anytime. So if they wanted a relationship,
gone to visit her in France.
Exactly. So if they still wanted a relationship, like they could have totally done that.
And he can just come and visit.
Yeah.
It'd be like a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that, because I think this is a good point, and this is something that I even remember while we were watching it, but I think it does reflect, like, how old were you when you first started watching the show?
Oh, God, I don't know.
As like an estimate.
15?
Maybe 15?
15, 16?
I'm just curious because I think that's interesting is like the difference in like watching it as like a teenager where you're like, wow, they're so in love and it's like so romantic that he's so obsessed with her and he doesn't want anyone else to talk with her.
Yeah.
And then as an adult having the experience, and especially as like an adult woman, to be like, you won't let anyone else talk to me, especially if they're a man. What if they're my boss?
Yeah.
Like, what if it's somebody who's trying to get me like a promotion? And even outside of work, like, what if this is just my friend? So do you think that that's sort of the meaning that other people could get out of this finale? Or do you think that there's more to that as well?
Well, I think that because the show has so many characters, looking at Rachel and Ross, that's for me a tale of what not to do.
Right.
But then Monica and Chandler, I feel like that's a tale of what you should do because they showed so much support of each other and
growth.
And I'm not saying that having children is like the best way to go about it, but that's because that's what Monica wanted. And so Chandler really supported her in this. And with this like abrupt like, oh, 2 kids, how are we going to handle this? That's like twice as much pressure. Like he was still willing to do that for her. And of course he's going to be a great dad because of that, because he's so supportive. And like she is also supportive of him when he didn't have a job and he hated his job. She was like, yeah, you know, you should get a job that you love. Like, we'll bear the financial burden.
Like,
and they
I'll help,
did.
we'll figure it out. Like, we'll find a way. Sort of like an idea of growth, but only if it's okay in one way or another. Like, only if I say so or only if it doesn't threaten me. Versus supportive growth together. That's like, I want you to be the version of yourself you want to be. That's what I want to support. And that's, I want to grow with you in that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things you can take from it is that Chandler had the opposite version of toxic masculinity, while Ross had that version of being very toxic, right?
At least at the end of the show.
Yeah,
for
at least
sure.
at the end of the show. And yeah, I think when you grow up, you recognize those traits and you're like, oh, this is why relationships aren't really working.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time.
Oh, no.
I know. I just want to keep talking about it. There's so much to talk about. But if you could give the finale, the Friends finale, a one-phrase subtitle of your very own, what would that be?
Oh, follow your instincts, you know? Follow
your instincts or follow your dreams?
Follow your dreams, maybe.
Your dreams.
Follow your dreams and don't let, like...
Or both, I guess. We could say follow your instincts and dreams.
Yeah, follow your instincts, follow your dreams. Maybe even decenter men. I don't know.
Which one of those? Okay, I'll give you the option. This is because they're both fun. Which one of these calls to you more? Decenter men or follow your dreams?
I think follow your dreams because, you know, you want to put the focus on yourself. And I think ultimately that's what everyone should do is they should focus on their own growth.
And that does sort of like map up with, I guess, what everybody does is they follow their dream at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Okay. The ones we like. Sorry, I sound dead a little bit because like I'm thinking of ones I like, but I'm also thinking of ones that I don't like. I guess you did follow your dreams, Ross, when you wanted to go meet up with her. So, okay, whatever. But yeah. So Friends, follow your dreams.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. This was so much fun to like reminisce over.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's so much to it. But to all of you listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan International. I was talking with my guest, Kim, about the Friends finale.
Yes, thanks again for having me.
Friends, follow your dreams.
Yes, follow your dreams.
A Tale of Our Time. We'll see you next time. Catch the latest RTI news, programs, previews, and more on our website, en.rti.org.tw.